Hello, my name is Rick, and this is a video about the game Battletech. Battletech and I go back a little bit of a ways. In fact, I remember a little game called Battle Droids. And I've played several versions of Battletech through the years, including one of the more recent ones. So I'm actually much more familiar with the tabletop rules than I am the video game, or was until I started playing the video game lots and lots. I thought I'd make a video about the way my robots are designed and the way I've been setting up my soldiers. I have a king crab, I have a Highlander, I have an awesome, and then I have a lance of lighter mechs because I restarted the campaign recently to see if I could do better or how it would be different. And the answer was yes, and pleasingly so. So let's see, what do we got here? I don't usually feel the need to keep too many of the mechs around because either they don't take that much damage or they get repaired in transit while traveling from place to place. I've got my absolute favorite King Crab here with the best weapons I could put on them. I mean, same goes for all the team here, really. They're all got the anti-injury resist cockpit mods of various strength because the headshots in the game are so ridiculously frequent that nothing else makes any sense. The King Crab has a minus 20 stability damage gyro, which really helps because it's a favored target. It's got an AC 20 plus 10 damage, plus 10 stability, which is nice, but I really like the plus 20 damage, plus 20 stability damage. I mean, if the 100 damage the AC 20 is packing is not enough for you, the 120 better be, because that's as big as it gets, so far as I'm aware. It's got an LRM 15 on it for a little bit of long range fire, which the AC 20 is not. It's not very long range. And then it's got a SRM 4 plus, which rarely, if ever, gets fired because most things don't survive being around the King Crab for very long. With those twin AC 20s, it can punch through the armor of a lighter mech in one shot. So then you've got the next best, really arguably mech, the Highlander that Kamea gave us. Because it's got the Gauss rifle, which I don't know how to get any other way. It's also packing a bunch of medium lasers. It's packing quite a few heat sinks, but some of the double heat sinks were taken off and given to other mechs because it just didn't need them between the LRM 20 and the Gauss rifle. It doesn't usually generate that much heat. Let's see. You've also got the Highlander long range, or the Highlander L, with the usual cockpit mod. It's got a gyro for hit defense in case anyone closes in for a punch. It's got some medium lasers because I really like those. It's got missile accuracy, and it's the missile carrier of the group with LRM 10 for stability damage, LRM 15 for crits and stability damage, and LRM 20 with crits and stability damage because it's part of Team Knockdown, one of the surviving mechs that were just all specialized in knocking things down for capture. And speaking of capture, this is not a practical mech. This is not the most damaging design ever. But this was a mech designed to hunt other mechs. This was the Hunter. And it features 5 medium lasers and 6 flamers. So the special thing with this is it jumps very far and it heats things up very much. And it's meant to disable other mechs so that we can capture them rather than kill them. And the downside is that represents a significant drop in the total firepower of the team And the only two times the hunter's ever been taken out, it was taken out into too much of a challenge, and it kind of got its butt beat, which is really not the mech's design's fault, or you got to use it right. It's got to be on a mission where you can survive the drop in firepower, and some of them you just can't. So still an interesting idea, trying to capture other mechs and having a mech designed specifically for it. And then there's the awesome O. I'm sure I don't need to tell anyone what the O designation is for. It's got the usual anti-injury cockpit mod. It's got a PPC with extra knockdown. It's got the best medium lasers we could slap on it. It's got a LRM 20++ and the LRM 10++. And indeed, the awesome O is pretty awesome with 1,400 points of armor. Now, one thing a lot of people are going to say is these mechs are over-armored. And they are probably right, at least by a little bit. They're made to absorb the many, many PPC shots that we come across at this stage of the game, or all the AC-20s the enemy is packing. Here's a quick look at the soldiers I used to get those mechs. Most of them are pretty much maxed out, which means there's not much difference from one of them to the next. But I had an A team of 4 guys, and I never let my B team get too much worse than them, actually. I mean, as you can see, they're very nearly caught up now, only a few missions later, because later on in the game, they're rather generous with the amounts of XP you get from each mission, which means people who are a little bit behind can actually get caught up quickly later on in the game. I tended to put a heavy emphasis on gunnery. I would put gunnery way ahead of the other people or the other stats in the skill tree. I've dialed that back a bit now in my play style, because I now realize that if you go way too far on gunnery, you're actually sacrificing these other things. And there are actually useful abilities down there somewhere, even if it takes a while to get to them. My favorite ones are, of course, the more health for the survivability of the characters, or the overheat threshold is particularly nice. Called Shot Mastery later on in the game allows you to core mechs much faster, or do called shots and capture mechs more easily, which is particularly useful if that's what you're trying to do, which you should be. Piloting, it's good. It's especially good if you're trying to throw a punch. I very rarely throw punches. Usually if you're trying to throw a punch with a robot, it's a sign that you're losing, because the heavier mechs do far more damage using their guns than they do coming in for a physical attack. Although every once in a while with my jumpy mechs, I will jump over to a tank and kick the crap out of that physically, but that's because they're susceptible to that. I want to talk for a moment about the basic primary and second abilities, because as other people on YouTube have noted, they're not all created equally. Some of them are more useful than the others, or just seem more powerful, while others are more situational, or just plain not as powerful. This is kind of my favorite setup for a main character. I really like multi-target, because they're often piloting the biggest mech with a lot of different guns. Maybe those different guns have different ranges to shoot at. I really like the breaching shot ability, because when combined with multi-target, you can breaching shot multiple targets at the same time. And when your opponents are in a lot of cover or hunkering down, which they frequently are, that's extremely powerful. And for the same reason, I like Bulwark, because it's automatic hunkering down if you didn't move that turn, which gives you a reason not to. And that's extremely useful, again, when you're piloting the biggest mech with the most guns and you have a shot at something. You don't want to go somewhere else. But then you don't want to get punished for not having evasion, so Bulwark is your answer for that. The piloting ability where you can move after firing is extremely useful. I've seen it used in a couple of different creative ways. In the hands of the AI mostly uses it to move the mech forward after firing, which really doesn't help it terribly much. The human player, if it's in a lighter mech, could wait till the end of their turn and then go again at the start of the next one, effectively jumping in, firing 2 rounds of things, and then jumping away before anything could hit it. However, you'd have to know that was the lightest mech, and you'd have to plan for that. And you're just because you sent in it's the lightest of your mechs isn't going to make it be the lightest mech on the board. Although if you know where they are or what their tonnages are, it's a good strategy. Again, though, it's so situational. You can only do it once in a while. I also like the fire and retreat when the enemy is slowly, gradually coming towards you anyways, especially, say, the early rounds of a combat where there's a lot of opponents and that's what you're doing anyways. Ooh, that's when it really shines. But again, kind of situational. Um, the tactics ones, I actually do like. I do like the sensor lock. I would run team sensor lock where 2, sometimes by accident 3, it wasn't my preference, of my guys would have sensor lock. And I would really use the long range abilities of my mechs to their fullest. Yes, it means they're not firing their other weapons, but when they're sighting for the missile-based boat, it's fantastic. And by habit, most of these mechs all have at least a few long-range things just to take advantage of that. And also, with multiple sensor locks on the team, one guy sort of saves their ammo every time they sensor lock, and then you switch to the other one. They do the sensor lock, the other guys do the firing. Helps to have ammo at the end of an extended combat, which frequently happens. And so it's a factor. It's a way of kind of managing the ammunition and stuff. Also, if you pair that with the evasion from the piloting ability, you can have a pilot who rushes up to the enemy, sits on the other side of the hill from them, sensor locks them for the rest of the team, and stays out of harm's way until later on in the combat where there's fewer people doing things, or they can jump in and out and do their evasive maneuvers. So another thing is some of the different abilities mix nicely with each other more than they mix with other ones. When I first started playing this game, I went nuts with the piloting. I wanted my main guy to be the pilot. Later on, it really didn't take me very long to figure out that's just not the most powerful thing. The evasive movement is nice, but at close range, when mechs get close to you, evasion basically doesn't count or just disappears because their gunnery skill makes it be not there once they close into short range with their weapons. It doesn't really do anything. So you can't use it for a defense for your mech. So another one I actually kind of like, but it's more situational and it's just not as powerful or useful as some of the other ones. But down the tactics tree, the Master Tactician. First of all, the passive ability of getting a +1 initiative is actually powerful. Having a larger mech that can go at the same time as a lighter mech, or before heavier mechs, either of those is very useful. It comes up constantly. It's a little thing, but it's always there. And sometimes it allows you to go before other lighter mechs, depending on how the AI or your opponent played them. And then you can take advantage of that by jumping in and blowing things up a lot, mostly. But and then removing 1 bar of stability when reserving. I tend to reserve a lot. I like to let them come to me. I like to see where they go first, so long as they don't have sight of me. And I like to make them not have sight of me by blowing up anyone who does. So the goal of my playing is that at the end of every one of my turns, the only AIs or enemies that can see me are far away off in the red, and the most they can do is get a sensor lock, or at most move into range. Because that means they're going to move into a bunch of series of bad choices for them. They're going to run into a situation where they have to choose, are they going to shoot at my guy who jumped into a tree or ran a long distance or sensor lock or that they're afraid of from LRM fire? And you can get the AI to do interesting things. You can get the AI to behave like its armor is low when it still has armor because it's afraid of your LRM mechs. And you can see this behavior when it runs away from you and faces a wall, when it isn't that hurt or not hurt whatsoever. I recognize that behavior. That's the I'm afraid of your LRM fire, or I'm behaving like my armor is low, because that's what it does. It runs over to a wall and points its back to you. So here I have a few mechs that are very much kind of beginning starter mechs. They're just barely beyond the ones that you get at the beginning of the game with your mercenary company. And my current favorite mix is probably my favorite one is the Missileer, which is a converted Centurion, which has been turned into a missile boat, which is effectively an LRM 35 at the moment. Uh, and then alongside of that, I am usually running the Laser Fire, which is a hunchback, but it's one of the medium laser ones. And it has 7 out of its 8 possible medium lasers on it, plus enough heat sinks that it can fire all of them twice, even in a hot environment, without even thinking about having to turn some of them off for heat management purposes. Um, then, along with that, I'm usually running the Short Hawk and the Destroyer. And those are both Shadow Hawks that are set up for short range damage. The Short Hawk has an LRM 5 on it, just for a little bit of distance attack. The Destroyer has a LRM 5 plus on it. But the main thing with these guys is they jump in close and they fire off their short-range missiles, and they still have a medium laser as well. Um, the long-range missiles and the medium lasers complement themselves pretty nicely because the long-range missiles aren't too heat-generating. The short-range missiles actually do pack quite a bit of heat. And then in this company, I do actually run a couple of spare mechs with almost the same setups as backups. The Lazy Fur is the backup for the Laser Fire, and the Shadowhawk L for long range, got to be honest, hasn't been taken out in a long time because I've been doing the short range ones. But the Shadowhawk Long is designed similar to a last playthrough where it's got a PPC, an LRM5 on it, and that's about it. And it's the main reason I haven't been taking it out is my last playthrough I was doing a lot of the mechs were a little bit of everything, where this time I'm kind of having one missile boat, 2 short range ones, and then maybe one a little bit more, a little of everything. And it's been interesting the way it's different. The last playthrough, I would attack people at range more and kind of let them close to me. Try to avoid that, but let them at the same time. This one, with the short range mechs, you kind of got to just hop in there and dish out tremendous amounts of damage. But it's denying sight, it's using the curvature of the hills and mountains and obstacles and staying away from them. So, again, like I said earlier, the new military philosophy is anyone with eyes on my guys is already toast. For one thing on this playthrough, I've been focusing more on, rather than having a military design and then trying to design all my mechs to that, I've been kind of trying to design to the chassis of the mechs I've been given. I've been trying to kind of use what they give me as much as possible, basically, and then use those mechs in the ways that make sense, which kind of required me to adapt my thinking in terms of tactics. This really is not terribly many missions into the campaign, and even fewer story missions into it. Here I have my main guy who's been in probably every battle ever. He doesn't take too many injuries, mostly because he's usually jumping around in a jumpy mech and is extremely evasive, and they're just shooting at everybody else, or they're shooting at the missile boat. For whatever reason, the AI really likes singling that guy out. I wonder if they somehow know he has the least armor, because he's always the furthest one away. Which means usually, actually, it's poor Decker here. His high tactic skill is because he's usually the one driving the missile boat. And so, of course, he's got breaching shot and multi-target, so he can get breaching shots on different things with the massive weapons that thing's currently carrying. Commander? Glitch, not surprisingly, sensor lock ability, multi-target, breaching shot. I haven't been developing a pilot as much this time. I do have the one,
Commander.
and so he's actually already useful because of that evasiveness. I put him in the faster and most jumpy mech, and he uses it to his advantage. And so he rushes up to the mountain and he senses them on the other side, and then he sensor locks them. And in the future, eventually, I plan to give this guy the jump in, jump out ability, or the fire and retreat ability, and see what I can do with it. Because my last pilot, I never really used all that much, and this one, I will. I hope you enjoyed this look at my mechs and soldiers. In a way, this video was made for an audience of one, but if anyone else gets any benefit out of it, I would enjoy that. I'm not saying these are the best designed mechs ever. I'm saying I've played the campaign a bunch, and this is where my design philosophy is at the moment. And I'm sure it will continue to evolve as I play the game and find more different things that I like and enjoy about it. If you enjoyed this Battletech content, please like, comment, or subscribe. Thanks for watching.